So who would have thought the Still Yours episode falls on the week of NEC? Because we actually had a great freaking week. I'm in a good mood. It was amazing.
It was incredible. Yeah. I really feel revived, refreshed, renewed.
So you always have to have 3, you know.
Always. If you end with, if you have 2 of the R's, then you gotta finish. You always gotta.
Well, it was nice that, I mean, I think 3 of anything doesn't matter what letter it starts with, but it was nice that they all started with R. That you had some alliteration there, which was nice. Thing. Which was really.
But I mean,
nice.
It was legitimately like, I'm not just making that. I wasn't making that up.
No,
those
exactly.
are the 3 words that that come to mind when I think about what we just did.
It sounded like a bit, you know, but it was not. No. It was completely genuine. It was actually.
I don't do bits. Okay, I don't do bits.
I guess that's my thing. Yeah,
that's your thing.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm learning from you though. Maybe you're rubbing off on me. NEC.
I don't know if that's good.
NEC.
Yeah.
Incredible.
NEC.
National Eucharistic Congress, for those of you who don't know what the acronym stands for.
Yeah. And look, if you know us, you know that we go to a lot of events. Yeah. So you have to understand that, like, for us to come home and even be talking about it is a pretty big deal. But for us to come back and say, like, wow, we had a deeply moving, like, type of experience that you are going to remember for the rest of your life type of moment.
Like I would tell my grandkids about it kind of moment.
Yeah. Like that's not the norm. And that's what this week was. Yeah. There was truly a revival. In my own personal, like I will share about like my own personal revival that I felt.
Yeah.
But also I just think for a lot of people, it was like multicultural.
Yeah.
And also like not divided by subculture within the church. Like a lot of times these events are like, you know, your super traditional people or your charismatic renewal people or, you know, people who all participate in one specific ministry or whatever. So like, it's like
or even like young adults or adult or kids.
Right, exactly.
It's all
right. Like there's a million ways that you can divide a crowd.
Yeah.
But this was literally everybody.
Yeah.
All together. Young, old, traditional, charismatic. There was no barriers, right?
Yeah.
It was anybody. It was the whole church was invited
from all over the country.
You know, so they had multiple styles of music, multiple different styles of speakers.
I think there was a gospel choir for one of the masses one day. Like it was.
Yeah, you know, some orchestra stuff, a 4-part like harmony quartet. Again, we go to a lot of these, and I've been in a funk lately where I just wasn't expecting to like, I don't want to say feel anything. That's just not the right way to say it, but I wasn't expecting like a profound experience, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I'm just so over the moon.
Yeah.
That I had like, I actually prayed, like I was actually drawn into prayer.
Yeah.
Like
same.
The vast majority of my prayer over the last couple of years has been very much like I have to be intentional about it. Like I'm choosing to do it.
Yeah.
Like I choose to like go to the gym, or like I choose to eat healthy. Like I'm like choosing to do it. But this week was the first time in a long time where I was like, I felt drawn into prayer. Like I stepped into it. Like it's hard to describe. It was really powerful for me. There was a sense of revival in my own life.
Yeah.
And I mean, know
like
that
you were saying earlier, like there's so many of these things that we do. Like we do events almost every other weekend, you know, so it can kind of feel like not old news, but it can kind of feel like, all right, we know the drill. We know what's going to happen. There's going to be a talk. And I mean, and it was in a traditional sense of like a conference schedule. It was very similar to the things that we've done in the past. But like, I personally think that the thing that made all the difference to me was the production. The way that the production team ran the whole thing. The sound was excellent. I mean, excellent. It was the best sound I've ever had at an event. You know, like the team was incredible.
Shout out Matt
lights.
Walden.
Yeah. I mean, everything was like pointing literally to Jesus.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it wasn't distracting. It wasn't about like whoever's on stage, even though the screens were monstrous. If you see pictures of the screens and us like in front of it, it looks like we're little tiny Lego people. Like it was like the screens were so huge. But it all pointed to Jesus. It wasn't distracting. It all led to Christ. And it was like, it was profound.
It's really, really, really hard to get to get production right on all facets.
Yeah.
Like, for them to be not only professional, but competent, not only competent, but like get the vision, not only get the vision, but like have taste and know when to like kick it up and know when to pull back. And it's, and especially with like a Catholic event, there's a lot of different things happening that could easily be confusing on the production side. So to find a team that can do it all is really hard. We've worked with some great production companies, but this was totally another level. Shout out to Matt Walden, our buddy who kind of headed up the production thing. And I don't, maybe we'll be able to get him on here, although I know he prefers to stay in the background.
Yeah.
But he really had a vision from the beginning. And the way he said it to me was like, technology can, I'm going to screw it up, but something like technology can aid the theology, or like you can use technology to do theology. Basically, like there were times where even though the production was like larger than life, it was there were times where they cut it out completely. Like there was a time when like all 100 lights on the ceiling all moved at one time and centered in on Jesus and the monstrance, right? It was a Eucharistic revival. So the Eucharist was very much the center of the gathering.
Yeah.
And physically that was the case. It was like on the 50-yard line in the stadium, Jesus was at the center, and then all of the production, like anything that wasn't required went off. Like, so it had this contrast, right? It went from like crazy opening, like Coldplay concert. I think even Coldplay's lighting guy might've been there. It was like Coldplay style concert, stadium completely lit up. And then when the time was right, it was like boom, and everything turned off, and just the lights went towards the monstrance. So that's the thing, is like that was production teaching us what this moment was. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like teaching us who Jesus is and who he should be, like the center of our lives. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway,
Beautiful.
so like the production was freaking awesome is the point, So good job.
Yeah.
And then of course, just the event as a whole, I know we know a lot of the organizers of the event, and they worked super hard on it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
They pulled off an unbelievable feat with like very little time. I don't think people realize, like, it would normally take like years to plan an event of that scale, and they didn't have years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So seriously, kudos to that whole team.
Honestly,
it was great.
I'm still like just riding on cloud 9 from it, truly. And it's rare for me to say that, because we've done this for how many years now? Almost 15 years.
Yeah.
Full-time in ministry. So for an event like that to be so meaningful to both of us and so many people that were there, I just feel like the response has been insane. Just people processing it online, and all of us just feeling like it was a mountaintop kind of moment we will not soon forget. Yeah. So really grateful for that.
Yeah.
That's what's been happening in our life right now.
Yes.
Lately.
So we want to
which has been pretty cool.
Look, here's the reality of it. It required and deserved that much of a shout out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's why we said earlier, we wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
So it was great. And then we're here in a great mood because we had a great week.
Yeah.
And we're here talking about Still Yours.
Yeah.
Which is the song for this week.
Yeah. Good song.
Yeah. It's a song that reminds me about identity. It's claiming who you are, claiming your identity, reminding yourself of your identity. And I don't want to say it's like basic or cliche. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like it's a wide spectrum of experience. And
on
so
the record, you mean?
I think the idea of Still Yours, like the themes in this song express like a very wide.
There's a lot of different directions you can talk about, honestly, with this song.
Right. And I think a lot of them take us into another song
territories.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, which is why it makes sense that it's the radio single, actually, because it kind of embodies the album.
Right.
The song that was sent to radio,
Right.
Kind of represents the album in a sense,
Right. It is a good representation of what the album is about.
Yeah.
And I think it's about identity. For me, it's about like just reminding, it's kind of stepping into that and reminding yourself of your identity and kind of claiming it, you know what I mean? Like, so reminding yourself who God is and who you are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I've always been told that, like, really focus on those two things. Focus on who God is and who you are in light of that.
Well, that's the thing that I always say when I lead worship, actually, is that worship songs are songs of remembrance. They're songs that remind us of those two truths, remind us who we are and who God is, which are two things that we so easily forget or get distracted from, from remembering. So, yeah, this is one of those songs that claims those things, I think, declares those things and reroots yourself in that truth, really.
Yeah. And it's also like an identity that is secure. You're not insecure about it. Like, there's a line where you say, none of my questions ever scare you away.
Yeah.
And I just, it's like, it does beg the question, like, are we, I didn't mean to say question, but it does beg the question. Like, are we allowed to ask questions? Are we allowed to have, doubts? Like, is our relationship with God secure enough that we will let ourselves have a thought if it comes to mind and not panic about it and go, what is this thought I'm having?
Yeah.
Like, let me bring that to the light. Let me explore. Let me try to discover what because I believe that God is in everything. And I believe that he wants to reveal himself. He doesn't want to remain hidden.
Yeah.
And
neither does he want us to remain hidden.
Right.
Yeah.
So like,
it's this mutual exchange of vulnerability and yeah.
Does that make sense? So like, none of my questions ever scare you away. Like, if you're saying I won't ask questions because I'm afraid of what'll happen. If you're saying I won't ask questions because I'm afraid you'll leave me. I'm afraid it'll make you see me differently. Like, that's not a healthy relationship.
Right.
That doesn't sound like freedom.
No,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Is love never questioning?
Right. I don't think so.
I don't think so.
So there's a maturity.
Then we wouldn't have a loving relationship because I question you all the time. No,
excuse me. Thou shalt not question thou husband. Is that what it is?
Didn't we take a vow of that? No, I'm just kidding. No, but seriously, like, that's such a beautiful way of putting it. Like, honestly, love should be the safest place for us to bring our questions.
Right. To be authentic, to be honest, to be ourselves.
The place where we shouldn't, where we should feel our freest and most open.
Yeah.
Well, and most exposed, like, because we entrust ourselves and trust the other. To not
in a childlike way.
Yeah, but also like I don't know if we've said this in the podcast before, and I'm sure people have heard it before, but like the idea of that vulnerable means to be woundable.
Right.
Like, when you are vulnerable with another person, when you are in a loving relationship with another person, you are exposing yourself.
Right.
In a sense that you are woundable.
Right. You're letting your guard down in some way.
You're letting your guard down.
Yeah.
Like, the buttons that you could push for me, the things that you could say to me,
right,
to completely dismantle my life, honestly.
Right.
But I trust you to not do that,
right,
because I love you and you love me,
right.
And the same is true for our relationship with God. But like, how often is it feels like this, like, it's not that. It feels like we have to be perfect, or we have to have it all together, or we have to like hide behind not to go Adam and Eve, but like hide behind the fig leaves almost, to be like, oh, you don't need to see that part of me, or I'm not going to show you that side, because what's going to happen if I show you that?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
right. And yes,
it's really hard to be exposed to God. It's really freaking hard.
Yes. And if you have that trust kind of damaged, then it can be even harder. Then you throw up even thicker walls. Just one fig leaf isn't enough. You're like, you turn around, you run. You know what I mean? Like, that's interesting, right? Because God comes into the garden, and I don't want to butcher the scripture, but I believe that, at least in the subtext, if not in the text, is the idea that God comes in and is like, why are you covering yourselves? Yeah. He's like, you don't have to hide from me. Yeah. I made you. I've you know what I mean? I've seen you. I know you. Yeah. You don't have to hide.
Like, don't be ridiculous. Like, literally, like, why would you hide from me? Right.
But
we do.
Yeah. Well, and so I love that line in this song. I want to grow up with a faith like a child,
Mm,
unlearn the fear and run back into the wild.
yeah.
And then the next line, oh Father, help me remember. So it's
Yeah.
about remembering. It's about remembering,
Yeah.
and having that faith like a child.
Yeah.
Um,
Which
Total trust.
I think I love that line too. And the idea of like growing up into a faith like a child,
Mm, right.
like not a childish faith,
No,
but a
no.
childlike faith.
Yes.
One that is full of wonder and awe and expectation and trust and resting in the arms of the Father and like believing that he's at work for our good. I mean,
Mm,
like all these Christianese statements that we just say all the time, but like actually believing it, actually
yes.
like living it, day in and day out, which is just, I think it's going to take me a lifetime to do that. I think I've just resigned myself to the fact that that's just going to take a lifetime. Like
Mm.
it's not an easy, like, today I'm going to choose that and then I'm set for life.
Oh,
Like
totally.
everything in faith.
Totally.
I mean,
No, and there are seasons.
yeah.
There are, like 'cause I think the lines right before the lines we just talked about, I think, are sometimes I wonder where the wonder has gone.
Right.
Sometimes I wish I felt the joy in my song I once did way back when.
Yeah, I like how you're quoting me, my own song.
I know.
Like,
Sorry, it is
no,
kind
I
of
love
weird to
it.
read the words back to you.
No, it's
But
good. It's
but
good.
yeah, it's like there are times when it's not
True.
so great, and the times when it's not so easy, and you're not feeling the joy, you're not feeling the excitement, the wonder. You're very much like disillusioned,
Yeah.
or dry, or just whatever. That happens too. So but that's why we say help me remember in the good times and the bad. Help me just remember who you are and who I am.
Yeah, the identity piece.
The
Back
identity
to the
piece.
identity piece.
I think that's what's happening here. It reminds me of when I lived at Cove Crest,
Mm,
which for those who don't know it's a retreat center, and it's a holy place.
magical.
And it's yeah,
Special.
it's like it's one of the only places I've ever been, if not the only one, where I genuinely think of it as sacred ground. Like
Mm,
it's earned that title. It's
yeah.
just hard to describe. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people, regardless of your religion, you might kind of understand
Yeah.
how places can just be special.
Yeah.
So people call them thin places,
Mm-hmm.
where the veil between heaven and
Heaven
earth
and
is
earth is
thin,
Yeah. I love that
Um,
description. Yeah.
and maybe it's where there's portals. I don't know, man. We can get weird.
Maybe.
But this is the thing. It's like it's a really special place, and I got to live there for a year in college, and there was this idyllic little white chapel. It was just,
Mm,
if you imagine like from a movie, like a little wooden white chapel by
yeah.
a creek with a big tree with big branches.
I think it's my
and-
favorite place in the world to pray. Truly.
Yeah.
Of all the churches we've been to, I
Yeah.
think that little white
That
chapel
little
might be
freaking
my
white
favorite.
Yeah, it's great. It's been in movies actually, so it's just
Mm,
this really idyllic place. But anyway, um, when you're there, just day in and day out, experiencing all the ups and downs of a full year of life, you're not always happy to see that chapel. You're
mm,
not always happy when you're dragging your feet in there at 6:30 in the morning.
yeah.
I mean,
Oof.
I was decent about getting in there on time because we would go to bed at like 9 p.m. But
Wow.
our day would start at like 6:30
Yeah.
and in the chapel. And so like one time I was late, and my brother, my friend, my roommate, my mentor, my guy, who I'm going to
You're not
throw
gonna
him
call
under the
him
bus.
out?
Absolutely. No, it's not a call out. He's I love this guy, Eric Martin.
Yeah.
Anyway, shout out Eric. He's my guy. But Eric came in and threw water on me in bed. It was one of those. And he was like,
gosh.
"Hey, 6:30," and like, douche, and I just feel the water
Oh
hits
my
me in the nose.
gosh.
But man, I know it was so good for me. I was
Mm.
like, he loves me and cares about me. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like I knew that's how I received it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I got in the chapel. But anyway, so we're there. We're in the chapel every morning, and as you know, you've been there. There's this stained glass window, and it
Mm.
has Jesus holding a lamb up to his chest. So some days, you're in the chapel for 2 hours, and over the course of the day and over the course of the week and the month
Mm.
and the year, you just look around at stuff. So I don't even know how many hours I spent looking at this stained glass window. And at one point, I don't know if somebody pointed out to me or how it popped in my head, but at one point I just had this realization that Jesus is holding the lamb up to his chest, and the lamb is listening to the heartbeat. You know, I mean, at least this is conjecture, obviously, but that's what I imagine was happening in this portrayal on the stained glass window is like, that's what we're doing in the chapel. We are the sheep. You know what I mean? Our head is up to his chest. He's the shepherd. You know what I mean? He's the good shepherd, and we put our heads up to his chest, and we listen for his heartbeat, and we try to line up our heartbeat with his and live our lives to the rhythm of his heartbeat. Like, I think that must be what it means to follow someone, right? You know, and to be one, you know, to the communion that we're called to with him.
Yeah.
So
that's beautiful.
So yeah, that was what we were doing there in that chapel. And so the reason it reminds me of this song is because I remember one of my mentors there. He told me just to make sure that no matter what I did, I got my identity from what happened. The way he said it was like, get your identity from before 8 a.m. Because you know, we was usually spent from like 7 or 8 or whatever in the chapel. So he was like, let that time in the morning in the chapel, let that be where you get your identity. And anything that happens after that, you're going to have ups and downs. You know, I remember I got this one big responsibility at the time that I was totally not prepared for and not feeling deserving of. And I was like, I really got to have my stuff together. And there was a lot riding on it. And every morning I was in there, and I would think about that, like this time right here, no matter what happens after, whether like everything I do is a huge win or whether everything I do is a total flop today, like my identity is going to come from this time right here in the morning.
Man.
So anyway, so that image was really helpful for me. And this song reminds me of like claiming that identity.
That's really challenging, honestly, for me to hear, because like just thinking nowadays, I mean, all of us can't live at Cove Crest. You know what I mean? Like we can't, not all of us have access to a chapel every day and a beautiful stained glass. I mean, some people have a chapel in their home. Maybe we should think about doing something like that. But it also just challenges me. Like this morning I woke up and the first thing that I did was look at my phone. The first thing I did was look at my email. The first thing I did was go on social media.
It's killer.
The first thing I did was look to that to tell me who I am.
Right.
And you know what's so funny about it is that today I did that and I heard it in my heart. I heard it in my being, like probably from God, just saying like, what are you doing looking there for? Like, what are you doing? You know?
Wow.
Like just a gentle, it wasn't anything like accusatory. It was just like, what are you doing?
Right.
Because you can be the strongest person in the world and still look on social media and see this person's doing this and this person's just released this song and this person's going on this tour and this person's doing blank and literally just feel like crap immediately.
Right.
Immediately, as soon as you wake up. And it's like, that is just it's just challenging to me. Like it really makes me think I have to rework the way that I do my life and the priorities that I have and actually like put into practice some boundaries when it comes to this stuff.
Right.
And I know that there's people out there who experience the same thing. It's just a terrible trap to fall into, and it's so easy to do.
Yeah, but it's you know, you want to be able to be happy for people, right? Like, and I know that you are like that's the thing. Like anyone who knows you would know that, like, you are thrilled when anybody else in the industry
gets a win.
Like, so it's like we do want to celebrate other people, but when you're
win for one is a win for all, really.
Yeah,
Truly.
totally. But when there is the other side of that, though, when you're just bombarded with it first thing in the morning, there is a weird potential that it has. I've noticed that later on in the day, I don't react to it the same way. But if I wake up and the first thing I see is everybody else in my industry or in whatever industry just crushing it, when I'm feeling like things are kind of going rough for me that day, it's not a good feeling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, know thyself.
Exactly.
Literally know thyself.
Know thyself. Just
know what's going to trigger you.
Don't
know
hit yourself
what's going
with
to make it worse.
First thing in the morning.
Yeah.
But I love that invitation part that you said, God inviting you back and saying, hey, you don't have to go there. Why don't you
Yeah.
talk to
Why don't you
me,
come to me first?
and I'll remind you
Yeah.
who you are. Come and pray.
Yeah.
Come and be reminded that I love you. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And like let me be your source of strength to go into the day.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to start here, and so even if you're
Yeah.
you're reading something like I had this quote from Saint Benedict written down, Pope Benedict XVI. He said, each of us is the result of a thought of God.
Mm.
Each of us is willed. Each of us is loved. Each of us is necessary.
Mm.
That's kind of like, to me, that's like the fruit of prayer. Like that
Mm.
type of thought, that just like knowing and believing your identity, that's like the fruit of prayer. Obviously, Pope Benedict XVI prayed a lot.
Yeah.
He was a smart and holy dude.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
To say the least.
I mean, that reminds me of the bridge of this song, though. Yours and yours forever, loved, adored, and treasure. Help me to remember them. That's never going to change.
Mm, mm,
That's exactly it.
mm.
Like, that's exactly it. Starting and ending your place, your day in that place.
Right. Right. Finding that place of peace,
Yeah.
that place of belonging, that place of being seen and known
tethering
and loved.
yourself
Yes.
to the truth and
Right.
to God.
Right. Right. Otherwise, what the winds and the storm and everything else is going to come and wreck your, you know what I mean? Wreck your life, dude. I mean,
Literally, yeah.
you can get thrown off. So
Yeah.
I mean, it happens. It can happen. It can happen to everybody.
Yeah.
So it's something about just reminding yourself and claiming that.
Yeah.
And so it may not be the most, I think, how did you say it? Cause I love it, but when you were describing it, maybe you were like, yeah, there's some,
The song?
Yeah. It's like, it's not supposed to be super niche and like super, out there.
Mm.
You wanted a song that, I guess you're right. You wrote it for radio in the
Yeah.
sense that, you wanted it to be a song that multiple people.
Yeah, that if
could listen
someone's
to and
just
connect with.
randomly hearing it on a radio station, they're like, what's this? Like,
Yeah.
she's saying some real stuff.
Right.
Like, I think that's the other side, and I know we want to wrap up here soon. I think that's the other side of the song that I just want to mention that's meaningful to me because of what I've been walking through over the last few years of just like
Yeah.
really struggling with faith and struggling with my ability to connect with God, at least the feeling of that, right? And I think that is really jarring to your identity. Like, I don't think I've realized until we're even talking about it right now how jarring that was to me, because my identity for so long was in, I'm connected to God. I feel him. This is who I am. I'm a Christian. I've never doubted. I've never questioned. I've never struggled in that way. And then all of a sudden it was the exact opposite. And I was faced with like, who am I if I can't hear him? Who am I if I can't feel him? Like, what does this mean for me? You know what I mean? It's like, it's earth shattering.
Yeah.
It's ground shaking. You know what I mean? Like the same thing, but it's terrifying, but that's the part of the song that again is like the remembrance piece. It's reminding yourself that literally nothing, including yourself, whether you feel it or not, whether you're struggling or whether you're deeply in love with God and you've never felt him more, and everything in between, that this is the reality, that you are still his, no matter what. That like Romans 8 says, there is nothing that can separate us from the love of God. Like trying to believe that and making an act of faith. That's what this song really is to me.
Right.
It's an act of faith, ultimately, in the midst of, for me, a season that was like the darkest night I've walked through,
Yeah.
So it's the identity piece mixed in with this other, like, faith is complicated and messy.
Yeah.
Part of the story.
Yeah.
All together, which is really the record.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just going to say that. Exactly. That's why it's such a good representation for the project as a whole. Interesting. I never, honestly, until today in this conversation, I never really thought about Still Yours that way.
Really?
I mean, yeah, I liked it. I never really realized why it was the radio single. I never really realized, it actually does really represent the themes of the record and like the journey of the record pretty well. So
and just the journey of the Christian
cool.
life and just being real about it, trying to be real about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you said all that, because you're right. It can be when your identity is like, you look at who God is and it reminds you of who you are in light of who he is.
Right.
When you lose sight of that, when that picture's blurry, think of all the rotten fruits, so to speak, of that. Like when you're really bitter about something that someone's done to you, you're probably not living totally in that complete peace of
totally
knowing who you are in God's eyes. When you're jealous of what somebody else has, you're probably not really living in that
the fullness of
in the fullness
light.
of, you know what I'm saying? And that's not like a judgmental thing. I mean, I'm there all the freaking time.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, the fruits, the rotten fruits of it are clear. You know what I mean? Like when you don't know who you are and what you're striving for, and who you are and what your purpose is and all that kind of thing, like you can have some really dark days without those things, because those are the things that help you through the dark days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to hear you talk about how that journey, that can be really real when that kind of falls apart.
Yeah.
And you're totally right that this song is like, help me claim it again. Like, let me fall back on my history with God.
Yeah.
He's been faithful. We've been close. We've known moments of genuine intimacy.
Yeah.
So when things are a little dry, let me fall back on that. Or like, I have had moments where I see very clearly who I am in God's eyes, and I just see myself as he sees me, and I just feel a deep sense of peace and of belonging. And let me just fall back on the memories of those when I'm not feeling it.
Yeah. Back to remembrance, man. This is a song of remembrance. It really is. It's beautiful in that way.
Yeah, I love it.
Great song. If I can say so myself.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Jeez. Didn't realize we had a legend in the house.
It was great. It's been a great week. This was a really great conversation, and I hope you guys got something out of it.
Yeah, and sorry we kept you so long. We had to tell you about the NEC, and then we had a lot to say tonight about this frickin' song. Okay. Anyway, so that was Still Yours, everybody. Go listen to it if you want. Hope you like it.
Yeah. Also, if you are enjoying this podcast, would you do us a favor? And what's the thing that people say?
Smash that like button.
Or leave us a review, because we want to hear if you're liking it, because I honestly have no idea if anyone's listening.
Yeah.
And if you're liking it, if you have questions for us for other future songs, like, we'd love to answer some of your questions. You know what I mean? So comment on.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah. Comment
I don't know
on
about reviewing
posts.
us.
Oh, really?
I mean, if you think we suck, just don't listen.
Just like,
because we're figuring this thing out.
That's true. Okay, that's fine.
But
But reviews are how other people find it, and I do think it's worth other people finding it.
I see what you're saying. Okay, I got you.
So give an honest review. That's okay.
Yeah.
And but truly, like, actually, it's, if you want to submit your questions, you could submit them to info@sarahkroger.com. If you have a podcast question, just type in the subject line, No Filters Podcast. I'm making this up on the spot. This is what's happening. info@sarahkroger.com, and send us your questions, and we'll maybe answer them on future episodes.
All right. I like it. We'll give it a whirl.
All right.
Well, thanks, everybody.